For us, this is an unbelievable turnaround. Before, I felt like a passenger in it, so it's still a bit of a surprise.
Something absolutely wild is happening in Formula One right now, and if you are not paying attention, you are genuinely missing one of the greatest comeback stories this sport has ever seen. Hold on, because we're talking about a man who started this 2026 season getting lapped by the competition, publicly threatening to quit the sport he dominated for years, and calling his own car Formula E on steroids. But then, Miami happened. A brutal upgrade, a wheel-to-wheel war with Lewis Hamilton, and suddenly Max Verstappen is back on the front row looking dangerous again. Let me show you something, because this story has betrayal, drama, rivalry, and a comeback that nobody predicted. Let's get into it. How bad was the struggle? So before we talk about the comeback, we need to talk about just how bad things actually got, because without understanding the pain, the comeback doesn't hit the same way. When the 2026 season kicked off in Australia, Max Verstappen, the same guy who won 71 races between 2022 and 2025, started from the pit lane after a qualifying crash and crawled his way back to 6th place. 6th! Not a podium, not a win, just 6th. And for Max, that is basically the equivalent of finishing last. After 3 races, he had scored just 12 points, while Mercedes were absolutely demolishing everyone else, winning all 3 races with George Russell and Kimi Antonelli going 1-2 like it was nothing. But here's the thing that made it even worse. It was not just about the results. Max was visibly frustrated in a way we have never really seen from him before. He was not the aggressive, confident, in-control Verstappen we know. He was describing his own car as undrivable. He said so many things were not working. He said he felt like a passenger, not a driver. A passenger just sitting in the car and watching the other guys disappear into the distance. Imagine being Max Verstappen and feeling like you have no control over your own machine. That is genuinely painful to hear. And then came the retirement talk. After finishing 8th in Japan, Max told BBC Sport that he was actually considering walking away from Formula One at the end of 2026. That sent shockwaves through the entire paddock. The guy who has been the face of this sport for the last 4 years was openly questioning whether it was even worth continuing. He called the new 2026 regulations anti-racing and said the cars felt like Formula E on steroids, meaning way too much focus on energy management and battery deployment, not enough pure, flat-out racing. Now, Red Bull at this point was sitting 6th in the Constructors' Championship, which is honestly embarrassing for a team that won everything just 1 year ago. They were over a second per lap behind the leaders, a full second. In Formula One terms, that is not a gap, that is a chasm. And with all the key people gone, Adrian Newey left in 2024, Christian Horner and Helmut Marko were both shown the door in 2025, this was a Red Bull team that looked genuinely broken, not just slow. So that is the situation Max was in. A broken car, a rebuilding team, a sport he was falling out of love with, and rivals pulling away race after race. That is where the story starts, and what happened next is where it gets really interesting. The upgrade that changed everything. Okay, so here is where the story starts to flip. During a 5-week break in the calendar, which happened because 2 Middle Eastern races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia were canceled due to conflict in the region, Red Bull used every single day of that break to work on the RB22. And what they brought to Miami was not a small tweak or a minor adjustment. This was a full-on, aggressive upgrade package that touched the side pods, the front wing, the rear wing, and included a brand new rear wing concept that was clearly inspired by what Ferrari had been running, something the paddock was calling the Macarena wing. Red Bull also went to Silverstone for a filming day, which is a limited track session teams use to test parts, and ran these new components before shipping everything to Miami. The approach was simple. The car was not working, Max was not happy, the team needed to give him something he could actually push with. And the results were immediate. After qualifying, Max said something that really stood out. He said the car felt more together. He said he could finally follow other cars instead of just watching them disappear. He said a few things changed inside the car itself, and it made everything feel a lot more comfortable to drive. But the most powerful thing he said, and this is the quote that every F1 fan was sharing on social media, was this: "I feel a lot more confidence, and I don't feel like I'm a passenger anymore." That one line tells you everything. That one sentence shows you how bad it had been and how much this upgrade meant. Because when a driver of Max Verstappen's level is talking about finally not feeling like a passenger, you understand that something had gone seriously wrong before Miami, and something genuinely positive had happened now. The numbers back it up too. Before Miami, Red Bull were over a second per lap behind the leaders. After the Miami upgrade, Verstappen said they had almost halved that gap. He qualified second on the grid, his first front row of the entire 2026 season, sitting right behind Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes and ahead of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. That is not just progress, that is a statement. Now, the car is still not perfect. Max was honest about that. He mentioned there is still a weakness in high-speed corners, and there are still some reliability issues that need sorting out. He had battery release problems during the sprint race and start issues that have followed him throughout the season. But the direction has changed completely. For the first time in 2026, Max Verstappen is pointing upward instead of sideways. And that energy shift from a frustrated, disengaged Max to a competitive, fired-up Max is probably the most exciting thing to happen in Formula One so far this season. Because when Verstappen is happy with his car, the rest of the grid has a serious problem. Max's confidence is a different beast now. Let me tell you something about Max Verstappen that makes him different from almost every other driver on the grid. His confidence is not just about ego or personality. His confidence is directly connected to his lap times. When Max trusts his car, he does things with it that genuinely look impossible. When he does not trust it, even the greatest driver in the world cannot extract what is not there. So watching his confidence come back in Miami was not just nice to see emotionally, it was actually a sign that the performance is coming back too. And you could see it in the way he spoke after qualifying. This was not the quiet, deflated Max we saw after Japan or China. This was the animated, sharp, competitive Max who gets excited talking about racing. He said getting to the front row from being over a second behind in the previous race was really incredible, and you could hear the genuine surprise and satisfaction in his voice. During the sprint race, even with the battery release issues on lap 1 and the start problems he has been dealing with all season, once he got into clear air, the pace was there. He said it himself. Once the car settled and he had clean track ahead of him, it felt not too bad. And for Max, not too bad in a car that was genuinely broken 3 weeks ago is actually massive progress. What is also important here is the mental shift. Max spent the first 3 races of 2026 essentially managing problems rather than racing. He was on the radio constantly, complaining about the car, about the regulations, about the feel of everything. And that kind of negativity, even for the best driver in the world, drains you. It takes something away from the pure instinct and aggression that makes Max so special. But Miami gave him something back. It gave him a taste of what he can do when the machinery is responding to him. And now that he has felt it again, you can guarantee he is going to demand more of it from the team. That hunger, that expectation of performance is exactly what Red Bull needs right now. Because when Max is pushing the engineers and pushing the development, the whole team accelerates with him. There is a reason people inside Red Bull talk about the Max effect. It is not just about his driving. It is about what happens to the entire organization when he is energized and focused and attacking. And right now, for the first time in 2026, that energy is coming back. The question is whether Red Bull can keep feeding it with the results he needs. And while we are talking about confidence, we cannot skip one name that barely gets mentioned, but plays a massive role in Max's mental state: Gianpiero Lambiase, his race engineer, the guy on the other end of the radio who has been with Max through every single championship, every battle, every frustrating moment. Their relationship is honestly unlike anything else in Formula One. Brutally honest, no sugarcoating, completely direct. When Max is losing his mind on the radio about the car, Lambiase is the one keeping him grounded and focused. And in 2026, when everything around Max was falling apart, the car, the regulations, the team structure, L'ambiance stayed constant. That kind of stability behind the scenes matters more than people realize. Sometimes the most important upgrade is not on the car, it is in the headset. Laurent Mekies, the man holding it all. Now let's talk about the man behind the scenes, who is probably under more pressure than anyone else in the paddock right now. Laurent Mekies, the Red Bull team principal. If you do not know much about Mekies, here's the quick version. He's French, he came from Ferrari where he served as race director, and he stepped into the Red Bull team principal role after Christian Horner was removed in 2025. He's relatively new to this level of leadership at a top team, and he has inherited one of the most complex situations in modern Formula One, a team that lost its greatest designer in Newey, its longest-serving team boss in Horner, its key advisor in Helmut Marko, and is now trying to compete with an entirely new car concept, a brand new in-house power unit, and a superstar driver who is openly questioning his future in the sport. That is a lot, and yet, Mekies has handled all of it with a calm, steady, and genuinely confident energy that has been really impressive to watch. When the media was asking whether Red Bull could keep Max happy, Mekies did not panic. He said very clearly that the Max he sees internally is a fully committed Max, meaning the public frustration is real, but the private commitment is equally real. He said Max is involved in every single discussion, every analysis, every decision about risk and development direction. That is not what a driver looks like when he has one foot out the door. Mekies also made a really important promise when it comes to what Red Bull owes Verstappen. He said the priority is giving Max a car he can consistently push with, not necessarily a championship-winning car overnight, but a car he can attack with, a car he can give feedback on, a car that lets the Max effect start working. Because when Max can push, the development accelerates, the team finds improvements faster, and the whole season can change direction. And then there's the bigger picture of rebuilding Red Bull from the ground up. Mekies has talked openly about the new wind tunnel coming online at their Milton Keynes base, which he believes will take Red Bull to a completely different level compared to their rivals. That is a long-term investment that shows the organization is not just surviving, it is planning to dominate again. The fact that after Miami, Max went from threatening retirement to being visibly energized and excited about the car again, that is a Mekies win. He managed a fragile situation, delivered an upgrade that made a real difference, and kept his best asset from walking out the door. For a relatively new team principal dealing with this level of pressure, that deserves real credit. Red Bull still has a long road ahead, but with Mekies steering the ship, there's a genuine sense that the rebuild has a plan behind it. The rivalry the whole world wanted back. Okay, now let's talk about the moment that had every single Formula One fan losing their mind on social media this weekend, because Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton went wheel to wheel in the Miami Sprint. And honestly, it was everything. So here's the context. Lewis Hamilton moved to Ferrari for 2026, and while his first year in red was rocky, he came into this season looking much more settled and consistent. In the early races of 2026, while Max was struggling at the back, Hamilton was quietly putting together solid finishes and sitting fourth in the championship. He became what people were calling Mr. Consistent, exactly the kind of stable, points-gathering racing that Ferrari needed from him. So you already had this interesting contrast. Max was supposed to be the dominant force, and Hamilton was supposed to be getting used to a new team. Instead, it was the other way around. And that storyline alone was setting up a fascinating second chapter in one of the greatest rivalries this sport has ever seen. Then Miami happened, and it got personal again. In the sprint race, Max and Lewis were fighting over 6th place. Not exactly the front-row battle of their 2021 days, but the intensity was identical. They went 3 wide with Franco Colapinto on the opening lap, nearly making contact. A few laps later, Max made a move on Hamilton but ran off the circuit doing it, and was ordered to give the position back. And this is where it got entertaining. Max slowed down to hand the place back, but Hamilton did not immediately take it. He just sat behind Max, both of them crawling through the final corner in what looked like the most bizarre slow-motion standoff in sprint race history. Max was furious. He went on the radio and afterwards told the media that Hamilton was wasting their time and that they lost around 4 seconds in that moment because Lewis just would not come past. Hamilton's perspective was different. He felt the situation was complicated by the track position and the speed differences at that point. But the real quote that stood out from Lewis came when he reflected on the wider battle and said something that actually shows why this rivalry still matters. We are actually having some battles as opposed to processions. And that right there is the difference in how these two see the 2026 rules. Max hates them, says they are anti-racing and like Formula E on steroids. Lewis has embraced them, says they are creating real wheel-to-wheel moments instead of the boring single-file racing we had before. Two legends, two completely opposite views, now racing wheel-to-wheel again in 2026. The championship picture might currently favor others, but when these two are on track together, the whole sport holds its breath. And after Miami, you can feel that the Max versus Lewis story is not done, not even close. The second half could flip everything. So here's the thing that most casual fans are sleeping on right now, and this could genuinely be the factor that completely changes where Red Bull and Max Verstappen end up in this championship. In 2026, Formula One introduced something called ADUO, Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities. The basic idea is this: if your engine is more than 2% behind the leading manufacturer's power unit, the FIA gives you extra opportunities to develop and upgrade your engine during the season. It is essentially a catch-up mechanism designed to stop one manufacturer from dominating the entire field the way Mercedes did in 2014. Now, Red Bull built their own engine for 2026 in partnership with Ford, and while it has been reliable enough, Mekis has been very clear that it is not at the level of Mercedes yet. He estimates Mercedes has around 0.3 per lap over Red Bull, purely from the engine side. That is a significant gap, and that gap means Red Bull is likely to qualify for the ADUO system. What does that mean in practice? It means Red Bull could get additional engine upgrades during the season that other teams cannot access. An engine that closes 0.3 per lap is an engine that suddenly makes Max competitive at every single circuit. Combined with the aerodynamic improvements already arriving on the RB22, this could be the combination that turns Red Bull from a midfield team back into a genuine title contender in the second half of the year. Mekis has also confirmed that a brand new wind tunnel at Red Bull's Milton Keynes base is coming online this year. New wind tunnel data means faster development, better correlation between the simulator and the real car, and a Red Bull that improves quicker than anyone else on the grid in the second half of the season. So while Mercedes looks dominant right now and Kimi Antonelli sits at the top of the championship, the smart money says the second half of 2026 is going to look very different, and Max Verstappen with a car he finally trusts is going to be right in the middle of it. The bigger picture, so let's bring it all together. Max started 2026 as almost a forgotten man in his own team. Broken car, zero confidence, retirement threats, a second behind the leaders. Then Miami came, and everything shifted. The upgrade worked, the confidence is back, Mekis is holding the team together, Lewis is pushing him from Ferrari, and the ADO engine window could flip the whole championship picture by summer. My personal opinion, Max Verstappen is not done, not even close. The hunger is back, and a hungry Max with a working car is the most dangerous thing in Formula One. But here is the question I want to leave you with. If Red Bull give Max a championship-winning car in the second half of 2026, does he stay or does he still walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. See you in the next one.